Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Maeve, and today we're doing another renovation. If you tuned into my previous renovation video that I posted recently, this is just like that. This is actually the lot right next door to the lot that I previously showed a renovation for. If you didn't see that video, let me explain. Basically, what I've done is I have gone to the gallery and downloaded a whole bunch of different abandoned builds, and most of them have the hashtag on them, hashtag fix me Lil Simsy. And if you're not familiar with Lil Simsy, she's a very famous YouTuber, and she does these kinds of renovations where people will put that hashtag in their description on the gallery, and then she'll download them and renovate or flip those houses or builds or whatever. So that's basically what I'm doing here. And this was a tiny home, so I don't remember exactly how many tiles it had. I think the smallest tier, so there's 3 tiers for like the tiny home challenge or whatever. And I think this one started out in the smallest tier, and I added a few tiles just so that I could have a little more porch space, and also to make the interior just a tiny bit less cramped. So I think it ended up being in the middle tier instead of the bottom tier, but it could have been the highest tier. So I know the highest tier is like 100 tiles, and then below that I think is maybe 65, and then below that I think is maybe like 40 or something. That's not something that I usually pay attention to, so I'm not sure. But yeah, this is a pretty small home. It's much smaller than what I'm used to building or even renovating. I don't think I've ever worked with a build that was this small. And it really is a challenge to fit everything in these really small spaces. So that was just really interesting for me. This was another build, just like the last one. It didn't have a back entrance, and I think I actually like forgot to add one. So this is not as realistic as I like my builds to be. As I mentioned in my last video, in order to be up to code in the United States, because of like in case of fire, you always want to have like both a front entrance and a back entrance to your home. And it's like actually illegal, like not to have a front and a back door to your house. So in that sense, this is really not a realistic build at all. And I kind of regret not adding a back door and like a tiny little like back porch, backyard area. But the more that I worked on this build, I feel like the less enthusiastic I was about it. Just because of like some of the weird shapes, and I was having a hard time really imagining the type of person who would live in such a small home like this. I just wasn't really sure, I think, even what I wanted to do with it, and I kind of defaulted to like modernism, I guess. One thing also that was really weird about this build, in my opinion, was that the person who originally designed this build, they put like a cat graveyard in the back. And like you might have seen that like a few, like maybe a minute or two ago, that I was like deleting all these cat headstones. I thought that was kind of weird and a little bit creepy to have like so many cat headstones. So I got rid of them. I know like in the previous build that I did that was right next door to this one, the original build had like a dog headstone, but it was only one. So I incorporated that into the build. But this one, it had like a dozen cat headstones, and that was like way over the top. So I just got rid of them. We can pretend that the previous owner's beloved pets are still buried in, on this lot, but I just don't want all those headstones there. I thought it was really creepy. So later you'll see that in that area, I replaced it all with like a fountain And like there had been a bench out there, so like I keep the bench there, but I put it in front of like a little fountain area instead of in front of like a morning, like mourning space. And I think that looked a lot nicer, although I will say I think that's where I blew a large part of my budget on this build. Something that's really difficult for me to keep in mind is that like when you place an item, it costs a certain amount, but when you delete it afterwards, it might not necessarily sell for the same amount that you paid for it. And that's where my indecisiveness can really be my downfall, because I will place something and then delete it and then place another thing and then delete that. And if I'm not careful, I will sink a whole bunch of money into just changing my mind. So yeah, I did end up putting this fountain in there, and you'll see that in a little bit. But right now, what am I even doing? I'm spinning the camera around so much. I used this window from the Moschino pack. I really, really love those windows. I think also those windows are very popular with Sims builders. I'm pretty sure that's like the only window that we have in the entire game and all the packs that they've released that actually is open. I mean, like, has glass panes, but like the window itself has been opened. I think most of the windows in the game, they're either fully closed with glass panes, or it's just like the actual window with no glass in it, and it's just like open, which is kind of weird to me, because what kind of build do you even put those in? Like maybe a ruin or something? Like why would you have a window and not have any glass in it? But anyway, that's besides the point. Here you can see I'm kind of working on the upstairs, the roofing and patio area, making some decisions there. I deleted this trim around the middle of the house, but then later I'm gonna add it back in. This house I really turned around, like the entire style is different, but I did keep the same exterior like wood paneling or whatever that is. Like I just kept it. I didn't see anything wrong with it. I really like blue as a color. It's very like, obviously it's not neutral in the sense of like warm versus cool, but a lot of people like the color blue, and even if they don't like, even if it's not their favorite color, I think a lot of people still don't mind it. So it's very like neutral, as in like it's not a strong, like overpowering kind of color. So I went ahead and left it there. And I also like blue because like from a design perspective, blue kind of represents feelings of like calmness and tranquility. Like it's a very just like almost kind of like a soothing sort of color. So there is that also. But yeah, for the colors in here, I really kept it like blue, gray, black. I know in my last build, I kind of mentioned that I had enough warm tones in that build to make it still like very homey and inviting. I don't think I was successful in doing the same thing with this build. I think it really did end up being kind of like uninviting, kind of like too cold. But like I'm not gonna go back and change it now. So like what's done is done. I wasn't as into this build as I was into the other builds that I've worked on, but I also didn't want to like just throw the work that I had already done away, so I ended up just deciding to finish it. But we're looking at the exterior now, and I'm replacing the fencing, the like old decrepit fencing, with this white picket fence. I thought the white picket fence is like, it's such like a 1940s sort of vibe, or like even like a little like barn or farmhouse type of deal, and I thought that was kind of a cool juxtaposition against like the modernism of the windows and the door and like the new railings and everything that I added to this home. So that's why I used that, was kind of to take that modernism and kind of like bring it back into more of like a suburban or countryside feel, so that it wasn't so sterile feeling. And then I put this picnic table out there. I've mentioned before in a previous video, I love using picnic tables on my exterior, and this one actually was already there. So this is more of me like incorporating things into the build that were already existing in the abandoned home, so that it can keep some of that character. But I did put this like awning thing over it because I do have the seasons pack and it does rain and snow, and I thought it would be nice to have something to like protect that table, especially since this is such a small home. There's only one seat on the interior for like dining, and your sim actually may decide to use their laptop in that space, and then they would have nowhere to eat. So at least now they can go outside, they can sit on the picnic table, and if it's raining or anything, at least they're like a little bit protected from the elements. Anyway, now I'm working on the bathroom. It looks like I'm experimenting with some different floor tiles. I think I've already kind of planned out my wall tiles, and just trying to get an idea of like what kind of feel we want to go for as far as like the floor and wall colors. I get really caught up in this sometimes because there's some of these wallpapers that I love so much, but they're quite dark, and in a home this small, they can really make the space look even smaller and more cramped, and I didn't want to do that. So I think I did use like a darker wall color just as an accent wall, like, you know, backsplash in the kitchen and one or two walls in the bathroom, and then I went for a lighter color for everything else. And I don't think it turned out too badly. It's interesting because like earlier in this same video right now, I mentioned that like I wasn't super fond of this build. But the more I'm looking at it, the more I actually do like looking at it. I just don't think I would want to live there. I don't think I would want to move a sim in there to play even. Like it's just not my style. I usually build larger homes, and I usually also play in larger homes. Even if I'm playing a single sim, I'm the type of person who wants to have a lot of space. And even in real life, you know, it's just me and my husband, but we have three bedrooms in our house. And like one of those bedrooms is, you know, my craft and hobby room / home office, which I'm recording in right now. And another one of those is our guest room. And then my husband also has like his office in the basement. It's a lot of space for just two people. And I think in The Sims, I tend to be the same way, where like I just want to have a lot of space. You know, I grew up in Texas where all the homes are very spacious. And I guess that kind of has translated into my personal aesthetic now. But anyway, so we're looking at like the exterior of this home, and that was what I really enjoyed about this home, was the exterior. I kind of did some creative things with the landscaping. I think you're about to see me start in on the fountain area. Oh, maybe not. I don't remember. So this little corner space on the exterior where that pillar is, it was a very awkward space, and it was really difficult to figure out what to do with it. And I ended up kind of like filling it in with planter boxes, which I think really worked out. And I really leverage these planter boxes a lot sometimes because they're just like so easy to work with. Oh good, so I did end up adding a back door to this build. So like, never mind what I said earlier about that. I'm glad I remembered to do that. I think I like almost forgot, and I must have remembered because it's right there. So that's good. This house is up to code. It has a front door and a back door. That's something that I'm very picky about, just to make it a little more on the realistic side. But anyway, what are we doing now? Playing around with some windows. I think after that is when I start working on the fountain, and then I'm gonna do like some more landscaping where I wanted to have, I started playing around with circles. So there's terrain paint in this game where like you can have grassy terrain or dirt terrain or like rock terrain, and the terrain paint brushes, they come in square or circular, and you can also choose like how much you want them to like fade out at the edges. So I took that like circular brush and I enlarged it, and I made it with like as sharp edges as I could get around the perimeter of that circle shape. And then I made 3 of these circle shapes over the lot with this terrain paint tool. And then around the borders, just to give them a little extra definition, I put some rocks from the debug menu. And I think it ended up looking really, really cute. Considering that it's something that I like made up on the fly. I've never seen anyone else do that before. That doesn't mean they haven't. It just means that I haven't seen it. But I thought it was really creative and really helped kind of break up the space and add some interest to like the exterior and the landscaping without having it be like a ton of work, or without it being like really busy either. And every time I do a build, I always pull out these like string lights. I always want to incorporate the string lights or fairy lights into every build, and then I like never end up using them. Part of the reason for that is that unless you want to lock them to the grid and make them like never diagonal, like only horizontal or vertical, it's really hard to work with those lights. So I end up just like not doing it because they take so long to place and like get them to look right. So yeah, I ended up not using them. But yeah, here we are with like the planted, like the planter pots. I'm sorry, it's moving so fast that like we're already past that part. But yeah, we're just doing some landscaping, and I know I keep saying that we're gonna work on the fountain soon, and like each time I'm wrong, but I skipped ahead this time, and like I really am about to start on it now. So yeah, you can see that I'm like thinking about it, and I haven't figured out that that's what I'm gonna do yet. Like I know that I want some kind of fountain there, but I haven't like, see, now I'm finally deciding like, oh yeah, I'm gonna place these like pool type of tiles. So like in The Sims, there's tiles that are like a pool, and then there's like shallower versions of that, and that's not a pool, it's a fountain. So I think I started with the pool tiles because I wasn't really thinking about it, and then I deleted all of that. There you can see I just did, and now I'm replacing it with the shallower ones that are actually for a fountain. Getting this diagonal line is really difficult sometimes, especially if like you haven't planned exactly where it's gonna go, because you have to use like these triangle tiles, and then you have to fill in the rest of the space with square tiles. It's kind of like confusing. It's like a weird spatial reasoning thing. But yeah, so now I've placed that fountain, and later I'm gonna come back and kind of like decorate it with extra fountain items. But unfortunately, when I'm building, I really don't stay in one place for very long. because I tend to look through the catalog and then like I'll be looking for one thing, but then I see another thing that I want to use, and then I'm like, oh, that would be great in this other room on the other side of this build, and then I end up like going way over there. And that ends up with, like, for you as the viewer, you end up with a lot of like me spinning the camera around. So I hope you don't get like motion sickness or get annoyed with that. But yeah, that's what I'm doing here is, you know, filling out the fountain. And then you saw like I found this other fountain piece and decided to put it over there near the bushes. And that like round fountain piece by the bushes was what inspired me to do these round shapes with the like terrain paint. And you're gonna see that in a minute. Excuse me. So these little circular like donut shaped white things that I'm placing right now, those are also fountains, and so are the spherical shapes. They also are fountains, and I like to put a lot of fountains together in one place, because on their own, usually the fountains in The Sims do not produce very much like water trickle noise, and I like a lot of that kind of like background ambience. I like the sound of like trickling water. And so when I do incorporate fountains into my builds, it's usually not really as much for the aesthetic. It's really for like the sound of that trickling water that I enjoy. So you can see I've put like a ton of stuff in this fountain, and it's very, very busy. I'm gonna end up coming back and like editing that down. I'm gonna come back and like get rid of some of that, not only because it's so expensive, but also because I thought it was just a little too much. It's too cluttered, it's too busy, too much going on, and I think sometimes less is more. So here you're seeing me create like a circular shape with floor tiles. That was originally what I was going to try and do with this. But you can only place floor tiles like perfectly on the grid, and I didn't necessarily want that. Another thing is when you try to put them closer to like the main building, those floor tiles are going to default to like the foundation level, and I didn't want like I didn't want that. I wanted them to be on ground level, and so that's why I switched over to this terrain paint, which also another bonus of using the terrain paint instead of the floor tiles is keeping the floor tile count low, because this was a tiny home, and after I renovated it, it became less tiny, but like you still get some of the benefits. If you don't play The Sims, you might not know this, but when you do the tiny home challenge, you get certain bonuses to your build that make the game easier to play. And so like that's the incentive to like make a tiny home. So if I had used those like circular floor tile pieces, it would have increased my floor tile count by a lot, and I would have lost some or maybe even all of those benefits. And so that was part of the reason that I went with this other technique, which is to use the terrain paint, and then I put these rocks from the live edit objects menu around it, like I said, to add some definition. So yeah, that's what I'm doing here. I think these little circular shapes, they add to the modernism, but because it's landscaping, I think it also kind of like makes it a little more inviting. So even though the interior of this home is, like I said, you know, a little cold, a little less homey, I think the exterior looks really pretty and nice and inviting. And while I wouldn't necessarily want to live here, it is probably the kind of place that like if I had a friend who lived here, I would want to come and like hang out with them in their backyard all the time. Because I really do love how the landscaping turned out here. Anyway, after this, you know, the landscaping and everything, you're gonna see me add some finishing touches, both to the interior and the exterior, and then we're gonna get into the after shots, you know, the the post renovation tour. So for all of these, you're gonna see like a tour at the beginning of the video, and then you're gonna see another tour at the end. So it's gonna be like before and after. So I'm gonna go ahead and go now, so I'm not like mid-sentence when the after shots begin, and that way you can enjoy that part without me babbling over the top of it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy all my videos actually, and I hope that you'll join me again in the future. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and until next time, I hope that you'll be kind to yourself and be kind to others, and always remember to stay hydrated, and I'll see you next time. Bye.